Happy Tuesday. Just waiting for the last couple people to come in from the waiting room, and then we'll get started. It's kind of cool to see that countdown. I haven't done this before. It's been a long time since I presented on Zoom, since the world got back to a normal kind of pace. Feel free to ask any questions in the chat room. We'll be monitoring that. And then at the end, if we have a little bit of time, we can, potentially unmute and have a good conversation. My name is Justin Sider. I'm the Chief Information Officer at Belay Technologies. This will be my first non-PowerShell presentation I've done in a long time. So even though it's a PowerShell command for our title, you're not going to see a lot of PowerShell. The slides, I haven't uploaded them, the most recent copy, but you can use your QR code. I didn't know how else to share stuff today. So there's going to be a lot of QR codes on the slides that'll take you to different things that I'm talking about. So a little bit about me. I do have a blog out there, invokeautomation.blog. You can find me on Twitter, Slack, GitHub, PowerShell Gallery, all those places. I'm typically under the username JP Sider. From a VMware perspective, I've been using it from the early 2000s. I'm a member of VMUG Advantage. I'm on the board of directors for VMUG, vExpert for a long time, VMware Code Coach for a long time. By trade, I am a PowerShell developer, but outside of this, I am from Maryland in the US, moved to Texas a couple years ago. I've been hanging out down here ever since. You can find me down here on the soccer fields, playing golf. I've got a wife, a couple kids, and typically just like to be outside and hang out. So today's agenda, we are going to take a look at VCF 9, and we'll dive into some of the reasons why 9 was important to Belay. You're going to see a lot about Belay and what we do. This is not attempted to be a sales pitch. I'm not trying to sell you anything, but feel free to check us out. I'm going to do my best to tell you about all of the things that we do with VMware to give you kind of an understanding of why 9 is important and the different things that went into our decision making around what our deployment mechanism is going to be. So we're going to talk about our workloads. We're going to talk about our current deployment and kind of show you historically why we've made decisions and why we've kind of backed ourselves into a corner and why VCF 9 is going to be a huge kind of turning stone for us. And then we'll just talk about some general VCF considerations. This is all about evolution, and I think VMware's message is that they want to evolve your private cloud, and I actually do believe we're going to do that as a group. All right, so Belay's workloads. We have a product called Summit RTS. It is a range testing suite that we provide on-prem for our users. You can also test in our lab that we host for you. VMware is one of our hypervisors, and we do have other hyperscalers that we're able to connect into. So that'll be all I talk about other hypervisors. The rest of the conversation is going to be about VMware and its products. So from a range testing solution, what we do is we provide two major solutions. One of them being a provisioning engine, and the other one being a task execution engine. And we pair those together. A lot of tools out there might be a provisioning engine, and then a lot of tools out there might do automated testing for an environment that is already provisioned. And what we've done is just kind of bundled those together. If you've been around VMware for a long time, they have this thing called hands-on labs. And if you think about, going to a VMware Explorer or in the past, a VMworld, you walk into the hands-on lab section, there's 200, 300, 400 seats depending upon what year you went, and everyone can launch a virtual environment all to themselves, run through their labs, and then that gets destroyed at the end of their lab. So think of that as how we do our testing for our users. So very similar to what Hands-On Labs does in the fact that we need to provision a potentially multiple virtual networks, all the virtual machines, the applications that sit on those virtual machines. And then instead of a user going through the Hands-On Labs, we're actually doing all the user-based orchestration, the interaction between clients, applications are all automated inside of our product. So outside of the hands-on lab type of thing, we have other use cases such as security patch testing integration testing, and just overall range testing. If I insert something into my network, what happens? If I put a patch on the machine, what happens, etc. Cool. All right, so here's our general workflow from a Summit RTS perspective. We have phase one where we provision our virtual environments. Phase two, we run through our user scenarios, and that's on a rinse and repeat uh, cycle. So as many things as they want to happen inside of that scenario, we can take a snapshot, we can revert back to the snapshot, and we do this over and over and over as they define in their test plan. And then our last piece is that from those machines that are running, from those applications that are running inside of that scenario, we can pull logs, screenshots, all of those things, and just a little snip of what the UI looks like for Summit RTS. So we're going to collect all of those files, and then we'll allow the user to export those locally if they want to pull them out of our system. Some of our challenges, everyone kind of runs up against this. Scalability, when you're working in an automated system is key, and, identifying the choke points. So we constantly see that we're playing whack-a-mole where, maybe we fix some network slowdown, and then the next thing is we can't provision VMs fast enough, or we need storage, we need different storage. Um, there's always some problem in the system that we're working on. The next thing is efficiency. So we want to try and maximize the compute at all times. So think of it like a game of Tetris for us. So we might have 5 customers in our system, and we need to kind of fit them into our hosts, into our compute and storage, so that we're utilizing whether it be their on-prem solution, their on-prem cloud, or whether it's ours. And we want to make sure that, we don't have idle CPUs, basically. We don't really have a whole lot of memory issues inside the system. Everything's kind of CPU based. From a security aspect, when we're running in our private cloud, we want to make sure that our customer workloads are separate. NSX does a good job of this from a virtual machine and application perspective, but we're also talking about their access into our system. So this is external access, however they're accessing our system, and then ensuring that only, approved users can download results. They're only getting results from their own systems, and then, they can only rate in our system. And then throughput is also going to be pretty important. We want to make sure that our users are getting their results as fast as possible. So sometimes that bounces against efficiency. We want to make sure we're using as much of the system as possible, but we need to make sure that we're not having users wait on other users' tests to get through our system. So our current deployment, you're going to see the big red X on vSAN. There's nothing wrong with vSAN. We do believe it has its place, but we are not a vSAN customer. We do use vCenter, ESX, NSX, and Log Insight as our primary VMware products at this current state. We're ranging in versions dependent upon our customer base back to 6, 7, and now we're running all the way up through vSphere 8 with different versions of NSX as we go along. Log Insight we use to capture all of the logs from our infrastructure, and then we have our own login solution for the application itself. So this is pretty much just infrastructure is what we're talking about here. On top of our VMware infrastructure, we are running Kubernetes. We are using Rancher at this point. At the time that we went through our deployment, Rancher seemed to be the simplest that we could use. Additionally, we can use Rancher across multiple hypervisors. So for us, at the time, it made sense to enter into an agreement with Rancher and use that for our Kubernetes platform. There's lots of PowerShell, obviously, with me being on board. We do a lot of PowerShell and actually Python too. The gentleman that sits next to me is a Python developer. So from an automation and monitoring standpoint, we take turns whether when a task comes in, whether to choose PowerShell or Python to automate those things. Just some other notes as we look into our test range. We use a single namespace in our Kubernetes per test range. So if you're talking about pre-prod, prod, integration, all of those have their own namespace inside of our system, allows us to keep our configs clean, and deployment's pretty easy to do as well. I see a question asking what type of storage vendor appliances we're using. We are primarily a Dell shop. So depending upon what the use case is for that storage, we would be using either PowerStore for running the virtual machines and then storing data. And fast reads, we're using our PowerScale. We have some other stuff in there too, but I don't want to make this too much about what we're using. Each test range has its own NSX domain as well. That allows us to upgrade the version of NSX without impacting other systems that might be running or impacting the test range that they're tied to. And then internally, we also assign a test range per customer, unless they explicitly have an SLA that allows them to share, which will reduce their cost down inside of our system. Again, no vSAN. All of our storage is going to be over NFS or iSCSI local to our blades. The reason we don't choose vSAN, again, is it's not because of the solution itself. It's just because we choose commodity hardware. We try to keep the hard drives out of the servers and put them into our storage appliances or storage solutions. And for us, the reason for that is the way our funding comes in, the way that our customers fund us. It's easier to buy compute than it is to buy larger servers with the drives in them. So, and I know that we can buy storage only nodes, but it's just our model is what we consider commodity hardware. So just compute, memory, and store, or memory and CPU. All right, just to build on what I just went over, some other considerations: physical separation of infrastructure and test range. So this allows our customers to test and do whatever they want. If we ever had an issue with one of those test ranges, we could literally hop into one of our switches and completely cut them off from the rest of the world, and air gap whatever was going on in that infrastructure. So we have very good security boundaries, and then the separation of infrastructure and test range allows us to upgrade our infrastructure, make sure that's secure. While we're in the test range, we're able to potentially leave it at a lower version, continue with automation, and allow our customers potentially test things that maybe a newer version of things would not support. We do have multiple NSX domains. And that is for our infrastructure and test range. So in our test range, again, we have multiple test ranges. Part of that is due to our size and scale. We run into VMware limitations. So back when we were talking NSXV, there was a limitation of 10 vCenters per NSXV domain. So we hit that pretty quickly, and we needed to have multiple test ranges. So that's when we adopted that multiple test range scenario. We do have prod, pre-prod integration, and then we have all of our user-specific deployments as well. Another thing to keep in mind is hardware refresh. So having separate systems allow us to potentially turn down a system, upgrade it, and then we can bring it back online without impacting other systems. Version control between VMware, Kubernetes, Summit RTS, and other third-party solutions is key as we're going through the refreshes of hardware and as we're looking at upgrades to all of those different software pieces. And then, as I mentioned earlier, kind of managing the blast radius if we have something go wrong, or with either what a customer is doing or potentially automation goes wrong. We want to make sure that we're not taking down more than one customer at a time. And hardware failures, we don't see a lot of those recently. Getting away from a lot. There's over my 15 years of working on this project, we've seen huge improvement in hardware. So whether that be memory sticks, CPU failures, and just hard drive failures as a whole. So not a huge big deal anymore with hardware failure. So that's a great thing. From a visual perspective, this is what our current architecture looks like. We have on the left-hand side our management cluster. This is where we have our DNS running, Active Directory, all of our vCenters run here, Rancher runs here, and then this is where Summit RTS itself runs. And then on the two right-hand side clusters, we're looking at our NSX management cluster, and that's pretty much controlling our north and south access for these users' tests. And then to our far right, we have our test range. This is where we have all of the user-based applications, virtual machines, networks that they've requested. Anything that they would want is where that's what goes in the test range. And the nice thing about the test range is we can empty it out at any time, and there's nothing important that goes on there. So from a protection level, the test range doesn't even exist to us. We don't back anything up there. We don't even care about it. And then during the test, we have those logs, those test artifacts come back into our management cluster and get stored in one of our mechanisms so that we can view them from the Summit RTS web interface, and then users can download those themselves. And then something else we've done with our NSX management cluster that we started doing with V is that we can actually virtualize that those hosts. So we've gone from a physical infrastructure from a management. The problem was that took physical resources that weren't really being used. And now we've recycled them back into the test range and just virtualized the ESXi host required for that. And the vCenter is obviously going to be a virtual machine. So that was one really cool cost savings we did a few years back. And as I talked about from a scale perspective, if we have our management cluster, we're able to quickly deploy in a virtual sense the NSX management cluster, and then we're also able to connect into those test ranges, that physical hardware that's sitting out there. And then, here I'm just giving you an idea of, what this looks like from a management or an infrastructure team perspective, where we have our core sitting in the center, and then any test range we can kind of connect into, whether it be a customer test range, an integration test range, development test range, prod, pre-prod, whatever it looks like for us. So it's basically kind of just a template that we can deploy out onto the hardware once the hardware's on a network. So what does the future look like for Belay? A little bit cleaner, a little bit cleaner. So I kind of messed with a little bit of AI, and I was kind of shocked at the difference that I got. So the rest of the presentation, we'll be talking about VCF, VCF9, and I was like, man, this is gonna be like alphabet soup. So what does alphabet soup look like? Can I get a diagram or an image that looked like it? So I used Grok, and this is what I came up with, and I wasn't really happy. I don't understand why the V looks really goofy on the one on the right. And for some whatever reason, they wanted to put an N in VMware. So that was pretty cool. The words next to the numbers are what I actually used to create the image. And then it couldn't find an image of me shrugging. So that was kind of interesting. So then I was like, Chat GPT's got to do better. And it actually did much worse. I mean, I guess it does kind of look like alphabet soup, but I was expecting like maybe a bowl. I don't know. All right. We'll talk more about AI towards the very end. So our VCF deployment, what we're looking at as now that 9 is released and we're looking to deploy VCF 9, comparing it to the product set before, we want to look at obviously vCenter, we're looking at ESXi, we're looking at NSX. We'll be using the SDDC manager to deploy our environment. We'll be looking to replace Rancher with the vSphere Kubernetes service. We'll be using VCF operations for logs. I'm going to have a hard time not calling that log insight in the future. And then we're going to be looking at VCF operations orchestrator and operations for networks. These are two things that we didn't have access to prior to purchasing VCF. These were add-on products to the current vSphere stack. And then on the right-hand side, other stuff doesn't really change. So we'll have a single namespace per test range. That's our software. Each test range will have its own NSX domain. We'll have the ability to do a test range per customer or allow them to share it based on SLAs. And if you're not up to speed with VCF 9, we no longer need vSAN for the management domain. So we will again not be using vSAN based on our current hardware platform. We'll continue with NFS and iSCSI into our environment. And again, using commodity hardware, the least amount of drives inside that server is what we're looking for our deployment model. So this is what our deployment model looks like now, or what will look like as we start to roll out VCF 9. So we have our management domain on the left-hand side. We'll still have our VCAs in there. We'll have our edge devices now that have moved out of the NSX management cluster and now into just the management domain. We'll still control DNS, Active Directory, and now we'll have well, I want to say Tanzu, but it's now VCF Kubernetes supervisor. And then we'll have all of our deployments inside of that management cluster. So the management cluster overall is going to grow, but it'll be one point to manage versus having to manage multiple. And then on the right-hand side, this is where the test range will be. So this will just be a workload domain. It'll have its own NSX infrastructure. It'll have all of its north-south being managed. And we're actually really looking forward to being able to take out that NSX management cluster that we had before. Again, all logs, test artifacts are going to go from the workload domain, pump it into our infrastructure so that everybody can download and view their results in one single location. One thing to consider with VCF is there is quite a bit of resources needed just to kind of get it going. So the numbers you might see might vary depending upon what website you're looking at. Um, I don't know that I have the source of this one. So this is just to take a look at the physical or virtual requirements to get VCF going inside a redundant infrastructure. So I know that there's some people out there trying to get it running on some NUCs and some smaller infrastructure for home lab, and I think that's great. But what we're looking at is how do we, deploy this in a redundant, resilient solution. Doesn't include backup solutions, doesn't include anything like that. So we're looking at, 264 cores, almost a, 3/4 of a terabyte of memory, and it doesn't include. Sorry, some weird thing just popped up. I'm gonna decline that. Oops, let me go back. This doesn't include any workload domain resources, right? So when I have a workload domain, I need to deploy the NSX infrastructure for that. I need to deploy the VCSA for that. There's going to be NSX. I don't remember if I said management or edges, right? So it just continues to add on to this. So our management workload domain is going to be massive, but it's going to make the workload domains much simpler to manage downstream. So read through the docs. There's a lot of documentation I'm going to be linking you to here in a couple seconds to make sure that you're appropriately sized for your management domain. All right. VCF considerations, VCF versus VVF. We did a long look at VCF versus VVF versus VCF. My God, and our biggest standout was we require NSX, and then we wanted to take a look at VCF operations and VCF automation inside of our infrastructure. I'll be touching on two of those later on. So don't want to get into a talk about licensing costs and all of that. This QR here will give you a link to the documentation at the bottom. So the URL's at the bottom, QR code will take you right to it. And then another VCF consideration is that vSAN or external storage. So keep those in mind as you're looking to build out your deployments. Cool. All right, one of the considerations we're looking at, again, we're a Rancher shop right now, looking at the vSphere supervisor and Kubernetes service for upstream Kubernetes clusters. We're still investigating how this would impact our current deployment of Rancher on VMware, right? So we're looking at a greenfield deployment. We do pay for Rancher support, and now we're paying for VCF, which comes with the Kubernetes capabilities. So what we're looking for is cost savings. So the promise of Kubernetes way back in the day was I should be able to take any application and deploy it to any Kubernetes. I don't know that that's always exactly true, but we're going to give it a shot. From a resource perspective, they're pretty comparable. I don't see an overwhelming amount of resources that I'll need in either solution. But there is a ton of things that we still need to unpack in the Tanzu realm. So naming schemes, deployment mechanisms, lifecycle management, all of that now that we've learned with our current Kubernetes deployment with Rancher, we now need to relearn, retool with the VCF solution. So looking forward to it, again, uh, being a shop, we have, not that many people on our team. So having to retool people is usually harder than it is to actually learn the technology itself. People seem to always be the biggest slowdown. So we'll get there. All right, operations orchestrator. So this is to automate common management tasks. So we're looking at basically workflow management. So we're kind of looking at this on two different folds, right? So we have an automation platform that does task automation inside of our system. And then we have a provisioning engine as well. So one of the things that we're kind of interested in looking at, since uh, orchestrators built into the VCF platform, is maybe we can reduce some of our code with Summit RTS and start hitting the API on Operations Orchestrator versus going direct to vCenter and potentially ESX, depending upon what our tasks are. So we're kind of looking to take our software, take a step back, potentially reduce some of the complexity that we've built in over the years, and take advantage of VMware writing the code for us. And then so we have to look at this twofold, right? So from a system administration perspective, and then from, our core product perspective. So from a system administration, deploying those workload domains, managing lifecycle, this is a tool that we're really interested in taking a look at. And there's some good documentation that the QR code will take you to for that. All right. Next one up, operations for networks. This is something that I've been begging my customers to fund us for, and this is basically, I believe it was like, I don't remember the old product name. It was like Network Insights. So this will give us application visibility, application discovery, help us with guided troubleshooting, network mapping, assurance for our security department, and then search capabilities. And not only from the administrative side, but I'm actually really interested to see what can we open up from an API perspective, use Summit RTS to extrapolate data from a given test scenario and give all of this visibility, discovery, network mapping to our users and allow them to consume what happened during their given scenario. So again, as you know, we're looking into VCF. This is now an included product. We get to kind of explore it from the system administration, the operational side of the overall system, but we also, from a product side, get to potentially offer this into our customer set as well. They might have some pretty good use cases to determine, they thought that their application was doing this in this scenario, but we can show them through the network operations that no, actually we saw this traffic happening during your test. So really interested to see what that looks like. VCF operations, fleet management. So this is going to be a big thing for our system administration team. We're taking a look at how to manage our life cycle, the certificate management, password rolling, manages all of our licensing, and then single sign-on. So again, VCF plus Summit RTS, we're kind of looking at how can we integrate our tool set, our software into VCF, right? No longer are we looking at just the VCSA and how we interact with vCenter, how do we interact with ESXi, but now how do we interact with the full stack that VMware is offering and is included with our licensing now. These are not add-on products. This is everything that's built into the VCF suite. So I'm actually kind of interested to see, if we had a customer come along, can we use Summit RTS just to deploy the workload domain? Do I even need to have a system administrator do that, or can I just automate the entire process once a customer comes in to our door? So there's a lot to learn about fleet management. Check out that link. Yeah, Levi, you make a valid point. I will admit, I don't think I called it out at the beginning. Everything that we're doing with VCF at this point is going to be brownfield, or I'm sorry, greenfield. So I feel the pain on migrating a brownfield environment into VCF. There are tools out there that will allow you to do it. Um, I did, kind of mention and hint at we're still running 6.7 with some of our customers. And I could not imagine going from 6.7 to VCF 9, let alone even an older version of VCF. It actually pains me to even think about that. Um, so VCF automation, the next slide we have here. So this is more of that self-service experience or self-service experience, and this is what we're looking at for our developers. This is something that we haven't included before, um, but with the add-in of the Kubernetes services and uh, giving our developers the potential to, option, not just deploying a namespace, but potentially deploying an entire Kubernetes instance just from self-service portal. Uh, I have a little bit of heart palpitations over this because I worry about resources. But again, if I don't have to, have a ticket come in, assign that out to a engineer, have them deploy the Kubernetes instance, make sure the namespace and all that stuff for access is correct for the developer, and the developer can come in and do it themselves, we're going to rapidly increase the pace to which our product, Summit RTS, can be coded, bug fixes, deployed, integration tested, and new features out to our customers. Uh, and I know that sounds probably crazy. I don't know how many people out there are using self-service uh, experiences, but I mean, this is something we've dreamed about for a long time. And the nice thing, again, the one thing that VMware is really focused on over the past year and a half is to make sure that all of their stuff is plumbed together. And all of the demos in the beta and everything that we've seen, they have kind of hit the mark on that. So really looking forward, now that 9 is released, to try and get this out into one of our development areas and really kick the tires on what this can do, updating our code to work with the latest ESXi, vCenter, and then seeing where we can reduce our code. The other nice thing is content management and then governance and security. All of this is taken into that self-service portal, self-service experience for what we're looking at for our developers. This is not necessarily going to be forward-facing to our users. Content management in the past has been a problem for us. Development instances tend to be wild, wild west, and that can be pretty dangerous. Security department doesn't really like that, even in the development instance. And as I promised, AI is not part of it. I'm actually kind of confused about whether it's part of the VCF bundle or whether it's not. I've seen it kind of both ways. But we're really excited for private AI. We have a lot of customers that are really focused on security and focused on not sharing their data. So for users that have their own private cloud that we are operating in, the idea that with the correct hardware, we can give them an AI experience by developing a agent inside of our deployment that'll work with Summit RTS that can help them build their tests faster. So we're a JSON-based test plan. We can analyze their results, just their data, right? We input their data, we point the AI agent at that data, and we can potentially give them we can better analyze their results faster than they can do it through scripting or through their own eyes. And then from an administrative perspective, we look at the idea that we can use this to help troubleshoot failed tests inside of the system or use it for evaluating our own logs and output that our system's providing. So this is not something that we've really looked at before. We don't currently have any GPUs that are available to us in any of our own private clouds or our customer bases. Not to say that they don't have them, they're just not available to us at this time. So as we continue to mature our product and get it onto the VCF 9 platform, we'll be looking to integrate the private AI components into VCF and having the tooling right there. And same tooling, similar APIs, authentication, security, all of this packed into the same product line. All right. I believe that is the last slide that I have for you. I will check this into GitHub, this updated deck. You can get it through the QR code. That's the link to it. Certainly happy. We have about 8 or 9 minutes left. I can unmute you. I think you can raise your hand. You can ask a question in the chat room, and I will hang out. Cool. All right. Question. Sorry for the off-topic question, but curious what you use for a base OS for Kubernetes. All right. So base OS for our Kubernetes is RHEL. So we're using Red Hat for everything. Does VMUG plus VCF cert still get you licensing for 9? How does the download URL work with that? The answer is, so Red Hat for Kubernetes is our base OS. Rancher wants us to use SUSE. We prefer to use RHEL. Our customers like RHEL. They're paying for it. That's fine with me. So your second question, does VMUG plus the VCF certification still get you licensing for 9? I hesitate to say yes, but I want to say yes. The only thing that I'll say is I don't know that the keys have been made available for 9 yet. The intent of the VMUG Advantage program is yes, that will be included, but day 1 or day 7 now, I don't know that they are currently available. So you'll still get your bits through your your VMware portal, and then there is a link. They have a link between the certification page and where you can download your keys inside the VMware portal, Broadcom portal, that will make that connection for you. So I hope that answers your question. I'm happy to unmute anybody if you have questions. I don't know if you can raise your hand or not. I don't know how that works. Hopefully we'll see everybody at VMware Explore. Just about 2 months away. Tyler, you asked about using any DPUs or accelerated networking NICs. Not at this point. We haven't run into any networking limitations. From a network perspective, our hardware, we're quad 25 gigs to our blades. And then from the chassis out, we're 400 gigs into an 800 gig bandwidth network at most of our sites. So bandwidth isn't really an issue. I think you're probably asking more for, can we offload specific workloads to those DPUs? We haven't really seen a use case from our users that would require us to add that into our system yet. Yeah, DPUs are still relatively new. I mean, not new, but for me, the idea of using them, I would love to take advantage of everything that we have. But customers want what works, and right now, we have a solution that works for them. It's efficient, and until someone can come with a compelling use case that says we must have X, Y, Z, I don't know that from an R&D perspective, it's worth the time and effort to look into it. PowerShell webinars. There's a couple podcasts out there. I don't, off the top of my head, the PowerShell community's kind of gone in waves. I feel like after COVID hit, it kind of took a downturn. Um, I know that uh, if you go to the PowerShell community, there's a Slack and Discord channel that probably will post events out there. Um, they do still have some like PowerShell Saturday events that go on. I haven't participated in one in several years, so I don't know of any that are currently coming up calendar wise. All right. Well, I mean, I appreciate everybody dialing in for the overall VMUG virtual event. We're really looking forward as a whole to get more folks onto VCF 9. I'm not a Broadcom employee, but definitely looking forward to getting some feedback and hearing, uh, what's the impact that 9 can make in your infrastructure, and how people are taking advantage of the full VCF stack, or if they've chosen to just do VVF. Um, but best of luck with your journey to VCF. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out, uh, Twitter, uh, any way that you can find me. So take care and have a good day.